Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. Today I'm speaking with my friend Pratim, who is originally from Mumbai, India, and then came to the US and was a software engineer. At some point, Pratim started getting into Tantra and eventually became a teacher. Tantra is a spiritual path from Hinduism and Buddhism that's difficult to define, but a narrow interpretation could be that it involves the transformation of sexual energy into spiritual energy. We begin this conversation with the subjective versus objective qualities of objects. Can perception be folded into Western material theory, or can that material world be folded into consciousness? We discuss my experience of a strange energy flow through my spine while meditating in an Indian mosque, and heart-to-heart energy flow that I've experienced with a couple of people. I describe the spooky visions I had many years ago of what would happen after my death. Pratim shares his own experiences of death and beyond that he obtained through psychedelics and Tantra. We compare notes on our similar paths into atheism, then eventual reconciliation with some of our Hindu roots. Hey, this conversation is kind of interesting. Do you mind if I record it on my phone? Okay. Abhasa, Abhasa?
Yeah, Abhasa theory, which says that an object that doesn't exist except in our consciousness. Mm-hmm. But then people might say, but then how do two people agree on this spot is red?
Yeah.
But the tantric answer is because our consciousness are part of the same consciousness. That's why.
Yeah.
Now each object has attributes. There are multiple attributes, but scientific, the worldview. It agrees on the objective attributes. This spot, for example, both of us see it as red, and so we agree that then we can have 100 people here, and most of them it is red. But that each object also has objective attributes, and those can be different for each of us. Like, for example, because your cat has been in this pot, it might have some emotional value.
Dude, totally. I was telling someone the other day that you know how people, when they have children or pets, they start bombarding everyone else with photos. Oh, look at a photo of my child or whatever. And on the receiving end, I have always, a lot of the times I've been on the receiving end of this. I'm like, okay, all right, fine. Okay, that's a child. Okay, cute baby. Okay, you don't have to keep showing me these photos. When it comes to something else, somehow you have a meter or a measure. Okay, I've shown you like 3 photos, done. But when it comes to this, somehow I feel like the way that you're seeing these photos and the way that I'm seeing these photos is different. You were really kind of taken over, bold. Oh my God, look at this photo. And you think that I should be seeing the photo in the same way that you're seeing. After all, it's the same pixels, but I'm not seeing anything so striking as you are. And then I started thinking about it. When I was fostering Poopy, I kind of started doing the same thing to other people. Like, look at this photo. And I was like, hang on, just rein yourself back a little bit. Remember, the other person probably doesn't see the exact same thing that you do, even though the pixels are the same, because I have seen Poopy in real life. I've seen this thing move around and connect with me and all of that. And when I see the picture, it connects immediately with all of these other associations in my mind and presents itself as something more beautiful. because of all these associations. When another person sees this, they only see like a picture of a cat.
Right.
So the thing that I will not be able to understand subjectively is how the other person sees the same objective pixels. It has different subjective attributes to me because of all the other associations.
Yeah, exactly. And what the objective truth is, it's sort of the common denominator that both of us can agree on. Like, okay, this spot is red, it is round, it has, like this diameter. But in a way, the more important attributes are the subjective attributes, because people can go to war or kill each other over the subjective attributes rather than objective attributes, But in scientific worldview, those attributes they don't even exist. There is no measurement of those attributes.
That has caused not a small amount of problem with Western material science, by the way. You were talking about Abhasa, which is the theory that it basically folds the objective stuff into consciousness, whereas Western materialism has tried to do the opposite, which is try to explain away consciousness or psyche as something that's emerging just from the material world. So it kind of developed an agenda where this material science thing is working really well. Let's just assume everything is material, So then the subjectivity thing, they just want to get rid of all of that. They just want to explain everything through material. But consciousness is one of those things where they're still we don't really know what the fuck that is. How can you have subjective experience arising from the material world? And people have written books about it. Daniel Dennett has written a book called Consciousness Explained. I don't know what he has explained in that book, but I feel
his basic argument is that consciousness is not one trick. Let's say the magician has the magic trick that he has 10 days of doing the same magic trick. Okay, let's say he pulls this rabbit out of this hat. That he has 10 days of pulling a rabbit out of
10
hat.
mechanisms
10
that
mechanisms
gives rise to the same phenomena.
Phenomena. And so, according to him, it's consciousness is that sort of a thing where multiple things are happening in the brain, and we don't know why consciousness arises. Then even if we take off one mechanism, the other mechanisms are able to produce it. And so I think I'm butchering his explanation right now. I need to.
But anyway, I started reading his book and I pretty quickly put it down because I saw a couple of gaping. What I was that's obviously not true. Anyway, that I've heard of this synopsis. Maybe I'm not doing it justice, of something called consciousness is an epiphenomenon arising from all of the brain mechanism. Does not explain anything for me when it comes to consciousness. I feel consciousness is one of those things that still is a thorn in the side of scientific materialism, because it gets its foot in the closing door and says, well, not so soon. And then when you start going in that direction, it opens it back up to this big mystery. It's whoa, this can't be explained, that can't be explained. Oh, maybe the whole world is psychic phenomena. But going back to what you were talking about, Abhasa, we were talking about that because we were talking about this energetic experience that I had of this heart-to-heart connection between two people. So, and you were saying, and then you were talking about the visiting of the visits from potentially dead people from the spirit world or something through dreams. And you were saying, so how were you going to connect those to the Abhasa
No, so I mean, I was just you were talking about how the nature of science is, the true science is to not rule out things, but to say, hey, this is what we can explain, and be open to unexplained things. But right now, science has become a dogma. The unexplained things are put into the box of craziness or woo hippie stuff. And I mean, since doing Tantra, I have been more and more experiencing this woo hippie stuff.
I mean, you've become neck deep.
Neck deep, yeah.
First it was like knee deep, and waist deep, chest deep, neck deep.
And there is still more. I mean, like, you know, like, like you said, there are times when I have orgasms across the room, you know, where there is no physical touch happening. And both people feel it. It's not like only I'm thinking it. The other person is like, yeah, man, I was orgasming here as well. So, and I'm like, what is it? And the thought of it is being open to seeing it happening. That seems like with you do not have to open your mind to be open to this possibility, and it still happened in a way, you know.
Yeah, but I do feel that in a way I am a little bit open. Like, I'm not doing anything beforehand to open my mind and invite this in. But the difference, definitely, big difference compared to the Neil of yesterday, is that now when it does happen, like, immediately I'm in a state of, sure, yeah, that's real. You know, I totally accept that that's real. And I don't know how, why, but that definitely is real. Yeah. And I'm content with the fact that this magical, unexplainable thing happened. And in fact, I'm happy. Yeah, so maybe that is a slight difference in the substrate, which is my mind, on which these things are happening. So, and definitely, and that change has definitely happened because of prior experiences in my life. There have been a couple of what you might call like spooky experiences when I was like younger, and then of course eventually psychedelic experiences open up your mind. Meditation opens up your mind a little bit more. But do you feel like there are any, like, even like vague general explanations for like this heart-to-heart type connection? So your orgasm across the room I'm just like making shit up now. It feels like the chakras of two people are connected, where it's like more like the base chakra. Or I don't know if this is like a connection of like two like heart chakras.
Yeah, there can be orgasms of the third eye. There can be orgasms of the heart. There can be, there can be orgasms of all types. I mean, even the taxonomy of orgasms. If you talk to tantrikas, they're like, oh, there are so many types of orgasms. It's not even like, because in the mainstream, it's like, oh, there is, there's ejaculation and there's an orgasm, But for tantrikas, there's like, whoa, there are so many types, and they are all different in different ways. So they don't think that taxonomy has happened yet in a scientific manner, because it is subjective. But I mean, what you say is definitely like the main book of my lineage is called Jewel in the Lotus. Jewel in the Lotus. There's a mantra called Om Nani Tutadme Om.
Oh, this is Buddhist.
It is Tibetan Buddhist in a way.
Okay.
But this book is Shaiva Tantra. And if you open it, those are the exercises, like how to move energy between each other's hearts. And stuff
that's
like that.
what I was going to ask you. Is like, is there some theory framework behind this, and does it actually say this is how you do these things?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because whatever has been happening in my life has been happening like randomly. It's falling out of the sky. I don't even know exactly what or whatever. Let me tell you another experience. This was not, well, you can understand yourself what this was. So when I was traveling with Prachi in Bhopal has this huge mosque called the Taj-ul Mosque. Bhopal was under the rule of some like begums, basically female like Muslim queens. And I think under one of those begums, this big Taj-ul Mosque had been constructed. And so Prachi and I were visiting this mosque at a time when it was empty. This big square courtyard, and then this like kind of like a palace type thing in on one side of the courtyard. And I said, Prachi, let's just sit here for a little bit, and I want to meditate. And because I mean, it's like a weird thing to do, like sit down and do vipassana meditation at a mosque. But I don't know anything else to do, and like, you know, vipassana like does something for me, so I'll just do it. And I was also a little bit curious of the effect of the location on the vipassana, because before I had like, you know, skeptical Neil had like always discounted these things. But I remember the first time I went to a vipassana retreat, it was with this guy called Rustam. And Rustam was a math PhD student, and he had had like chronic headaches, a lot of issues with his life, but vipassana somehow always like helped him. And so he took me there. He was serving at that time. As we were getting out of the car at the Kaufman Vipassana Center, he immediately like said, I like immediately feel like more relaxed. And it's because of, you know, what's in the air. It's in this place. And I was like, what do you mean like place? It's just like a place. He was like, well, a lot of people have like meditated here. Right. And so in my head I was like, what? How does that? A lot of people have meditated. So how does the air get filled with their psychic energy? And in my head I was like, okay, whatever. I'm a little bit skeptical of that. And I even thought, oh, Rustam, it's because you're a math PhD student. If you were a physics PhD student, you would be in better touch with the reality. That's what I thought. But I was like, okay, I don't know about that. I'm not convinced. I didn't think that a lot of people meditating in a place could induce something in that physical place that another person could interact with that,
tap into,
just by being in that place, not even meditating. So I didn't think that was real. I thought there must be a lot of positive associations for Rustam with this place, because he has come, he has meditated, he has had good, and this happens all the time. It's like it's not a spooky thing. Right. Go to a place where you have happy memories, you feel happy, you know. So yeah, but while I was like meditating in Taj-ul Mosque, that little thought did come in my mind. I was like a little bit curious. A lot of people have come and prayed here. Muslim prayers, nothing to do with Vipassana meditation, but I want to see what happens. And another part of my mind was a little bit like, oh, God, if there's a God, I'm kind of sorry that I'm doing Vipassana meditation in a Muslim mosque. I'm just going to do it. If this gets me in your bad book, so be it. So I was just like sitting and meditating, and Prachi was sitting next to me. And after some time, I started feeling this energy, like, in my body. And I can once again tell you, like, the location and trajectory. Like, the other two, I told you that it was in my chest, and it was connecting my chest, my heart to another person's heart. And it felt like the energy was going back and forth between the two heart centers, connecting them. This time, it started, I think, I don't remember where it started, but it was like my spine, I think. Maybe somewhere in the center of my body. And it started flowing up and down, like from the base of my spine to, I don't remember at the moment if it went all the way up to the top of my head or something. But the base of my spine is where it ended. And like it was traveling vertically up and down. And it was very clear. The energy came and it started becoming more and more intense. And then it started traveling up and down vertically through my body. And I was like, "Whoa, that's definitely something's happening." And then another part of my mind is like, "Oh, it would be nice if I could hold on to this." And then another part is like, "It's fine if it goes away." And then after some time, it went away. And I opened my eyes and I told Prachi, "Yeah, some weird shit just happened," you know. So, like, what is your take on that? What do you know about that?
About the spine energy, or about the energy of a space inducing or like helping?
Both.
Well,
Like, I'm just curious about all aspects of this.
Yeah, I mean this spine energy seems like what is classically called a Kundalini experience. And yeah, you did the right thing by not holding on to or having attachment to like having that experience forever, and you're enjoying it that it lasted, right? And it seems like more and more of these things are happening to you. So in Tantra, they say there's an event that happens in a person's life. It's Shaktipat. And Shaktipat is an experience that takes you up out of this dream reality in a way. There's not the end of the awakening, it's the start of the awakening. You undoubtedly realize that, oh, there is something more to this than I had thought initially. Then it makes you active on your spiritual path, and then along the path more and more such things happen. So it seems like at some point, I don't know, then you had your Shaktipat, and now, you know, more and more things are happening to you.
I feel like the first, like, spooky experience that happened to me was like way before I had encountered like psychedelics or meditation. And I think I was in high school at that time. Those were not good experiences. They were, they would begin when I grew up with like an extremely like neurotic fear of death.
Right.
And so they would happen if I either started thinking about myself, like who am I? That who am I was also a very fear-inducing question, because it felt like I couldn't locate who I am. If I cannot even locate who I am, it's this like gaping insecurity. It's like I can't even find myself. I don't even know who I am. And it's also connected to the fear of death, because if you can't find yourself, it's like you're dissolving, and that's like the experience of death. So somehow it was all kind of connected. So the way that these things would start is either I would look at my reflection in the mirror, and I would start thinking about who am I, or I would start thinking about my death. And in the beginning, it would be like I'm voluntarily thinking these questions. But at some point, enough momentum would start in this line of thinking that I feel like some other part of my mind would take over. Or like too much momentum, and then I would not be able to stop. And when I would not be able to stop, it basically felt like some part of my mind would open, like some like room in my head would open, and I would start being flooded with information that I did not want. And it was basically information about the experience like after death. And I don't really remember exactly what these were. I remember a couple. So it was basically that my particular identity and the particular characteristics that I have, body, mind, are going to dissolve.
All right.
And that when anyone dies, those particular things dissolve. And there's a kind of like flowing. So I visualized there was a backdrop of black nothingness, and through it a stream of light is flowing. And there are multiple streams of light flowing all together into this huge pool of light. And when you reach that huge pool of light, you're gone. You become that, it's not even right to say you become, like the you ends and there's only that big pool of light. And many people today, when they hear of that, they're like, oh wow, that's such a great, but for me at that time it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I was like, I do not want that. I want me. Where am I? There's no me. Fuck. So I used to call it the chamber in my head. And I have some early blog posts. That's when I started blogging, actually, 2005-ish, which I have some writings about the chamber. But those were definitely very intense experiences. They were not like I had a mild spiritual type psychic experience. They were intense to the point of where I was like, I can't deal with this, and I couldn't tell anyone. It made no sense to anyone. And it felt like I felt so alone in this like kind of terrifying experience. So I don't know if according to the framework of Shaktipat there is one or there can be multiple, or if this counts as one, whatever, I don't know. But this is my first memory of something strange and intense happening to me that opened me up to like, there's something beyond this reality and I want to have nothing to do with it. And like a long time later, after like some meditation or psychedelics, I'm not scared of my death anymore. And not so much. There is still a little bit of attachment. Man, I kind of like being who I am. I like my life. I like my whatever. I like my brain. But not as much as at that time. And now I can, I'm like more willing in certain different experiences to surrender the self. Because I've seen evidence that the more I do it, the better it kind of gets. So I think the fear arises from the resistance.
Exactly.
But the more surrender there is, the more like easy, the more it becomes like an easy flow. And so anyway, it's just because you were like kind of talking about
absolutely. I mean that's what like the beyond that experiences I've had also to point to this the direction of like the more you resist, the more you will suffer.
Yeah.
And the more you surrender, the easier and amazing it will be.
Yeah.
And a lot of our training in life is, at least in my view, there's a training for death. Like, if small things right now make you agitated, imagine like not being able to breathe, the heat running out of your body because like there's no combustion happening anymore, so the heat runs out, so it's all cold. The water is not circulating.
The cold.
Yeah, you start like at the point of the death, like as things turn off, right?
Yeah.
The water is not circulating anymore, so it all starts getting dry, and
oh man,
the more easy and happy you can be in that, like interesting, it's getting dry. Oh, interesting. Oh, suffocation. Like the more ease you can have in all of this, the more easy that transition to the light will be. For me, the visual is like at the moment of death, being thrown into a white water rapid where like and the more you try to hold on to, my wife, my parents, my bank balance, the more you will suffer. Instead of you are like
Hey, this reminds me of something that Hanan said once. She said that maybe this is like in the Quran or something, but she was saying that there is this understanding or description of there is a certain spectrum of experiences of how it feels when the soul leaves the body at the moment of death. If you're really like attached to your identity, then it's going to be like taking off a tight shoe. And then if you're not so attached to your identity, it's going to be like water flowing from the mouth of a jug. Like no resistance. So so I remember that. Yeah, but you have had some of this, like, through mostly psychedelics, right?
And mixture of psychedelics and the Tantra, yeah.
Yeah, you've had these, like, death experiences. Death in between and then rebirth.
Yeah. They haven't been painful or scary. They have been, like, I mean, if I have to say, like, you know, like, if death is like the squeezing before the expanding, they have always been in the expanding part. Or like, if it was terrifying, it's like I find myself in the womb, and I'm like, okay, I'm still Pratim, and I'm holding on to all the stories and drama of my life, but I'm in a womb. And I don't have hands, I don't have a face, I don't have anything. I'm like, that I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to talk to this person. And then I'm like, that, where am I? Oh, I don't have any hands. I don't have any face. Oh no, how will I do this? How will I do this action? I have to tell this. Oh, but I'm not in my home or on earth anymore. I don't know where I am, but I'm in this womb. Or, I mean, this is me rationalizing afterwards that that's a womb, but it's maybe I'm a tadpole, you know, and I have no reason to worry about my partner, my bank balance, or, you know, I have no reason because I'm a tadpole. And so that is scary at first, like, what the fuck, I can't do anything about all these things that are so important to me.
You're still, like, holding on to that.
And then slowly you are like, you surrender to being like, okay, I can't do anything about it. And then you are just settling into this new reality of being a tadpole or being the womb, and you birth and you're like...
Did you have that experience also?
Yeah.
Like the birth experience also?
Yeah, like again a new reality.
Yeah.
Because the womb is a reality of its own in a way.
Yeah.
You know? And then being the birth is another reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though, you know, we did think of it as, okay, you know, you do.
Yeah.
And that a subjective experience is so different.
And by the time you were actually born into the new reality, did you have any memories or identification with Pratim anymore?
I think because the initial part of being in the womb is so traumatic, and it just fades away after a while. Like, there is no point in remembering all the details of my old life because I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. So the womb experience just like overwhelms, drowns out the previous stuff.
The old reality. I mean, who knows what the reality is, but that was my experience in this dream.
But, you know, it has struck me as surprising even the last time you said this. We were walking through campus, actually, you said this. The experience of being in the womb as being traumatic. Because, like, usually humans don't associate, like, you know, a baby or something in a womb as being, oh, there's a soul in there having a traumatic experience. They normally don't think that it's having much experience at all. So what was surprising is that, no, you were still having all this, in the beginning at least, you were having this sophisticated things like, oh, I'm still Pratim, I need to do all of this stuff. And so that really, for me, it brings this questions like, what are, like, womb consciousnesses like? Like, are some of them still like, whoa, I was a Nobel laureate and now I am a kitten womb, you know, or like... Yeah.
And there's a thing you don't even know what womb are you in or where you are. You have no idea because you have no external senses.
Yeah.
And and because this trauma wipes out the memory, and then you are just happy like... Or just like, oh, okay, at least I'm having this.
And
then gone into an alien environment again.
Yeah. So what happened after you were born? In that experience?
So in that experience, I think I was born as a tadpole or something, but then I died immediately. I don't know how.
Oh.
Then I died, and then it just accelerated, and I was born into many wombs.
Yeah, this I'm curious about. Oh, not at the same time, back to back.
I mean, who knows what? The time just started accelerating, and at the end of it, I saw myself being born into many wombs, and then the Tantra, Lokas, Hamastas, Sukhino, Avatu, means may all be beings everywhere be happy. It appeared within my mind in a way, and I was like, oh, that's why they say this mantra, because I am going to be born as all beings.
Yeah.
And while I have the power to influence reality, because a tadpole doesn't have much power to influence reality, but I, as a human birth, I have some power over the environment that I can exercise to make all the beings have a happier life.
Yeah.
And when in the Indian traditions, they say you take birth through 86 lakh
Really?
wombs.
Wait, what does that mean? You take birth through 86 lakh wombs? Before you tell me about this 86 lakh thing, you're kind of touching on some question that I have thought about, like I've been curious about, is, there's this concept of reincarnation, right? And the normal idea about reincarnation is that one soul, that's maybe a human, becomes another soul. Let's say a tadpole. But I wonder if, it ever becomes that one soul divides and becomes 5, or 2 or 3 souls merge together. Because you remember this picture that I told you about streams of light? And if the soul is something like a stream of light, or the identity, then it's possible all the time for them to merge. Because in that vision of mine, all of it was merging into this pool of light.
Right.
So I don't see why 2 or 3 of them cannot merge together into a new identity and then fork off and become 1,000 or whatever. It's just so. Yeah, I don't know. I thought of it because you said at some point in time started accelerating. We were born into many wombs. I was wondering if it was simultaneous or one or the other.
So, unfortunately, I don't have a personal experience that can definitively answer this question. Means scripture and other things, there are multiple answers, because these are so subjective experiences that are outside of our language's ability to capture with precision, what is happening, So some traditions believe there is one soul that is having all these experiences. Some traditions believe there is a thing called a super soul that takes incarnations in 8 or 10 things at once, and is doing it. And there are different dimensions of reality. So this super soul exists in one dimension of reality, and then it takes incarnations into 10 dimensions. It's 10 different beings. But I don't have a definitive answer. But what you say also has been an experience that I have had, where things merge and then who is who.
Yeah. I mean, even neurologically speaking, there are people whose left and right hemisphere are split, And it's a little bit like two beings are living inside their body, and sometimes they fight with each other's will. So this tadpole experience, you were saying 86 lakh something?
That's the Hindu idea that before a human birth, you go through 86 lakh births. And it's only when you have, accumulated all that karma, then it says that, these other births don't have the power of discretion. So you go through your karma, just based on circumstances, in a way, but then you take God as a human, you have some discretion. And that's where free will and does free will exist or not exist? With that.
I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine called Rez. I think if you two met and got to know each other, you would find each other quite interesting. He has also had some psychedelic experience. He's one of those people where I feel like the universe is leaking mysterious information into his head all the time. But he was also trying to kind of explain this idea of free will from some visions or some ideas that he has had. I kind of got it a little bit. But wait, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Okay, can I tell you something? It's a little bit hard to explain. But I grew up atheist. And so I didn't want to have anything to do with religion. And the religion that I saw around me was Hinduism. I was just big allergy towards any of that kind of stuff. Temples, whatever, but fuck off. And then I came to the West. I came to the US. And I was like, oh, there's something, some spiritual thing. And then I started reading. Actually, I started reading Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist, because it was more palatable to me to get it from, And then I started getting into this stuff, and then I started resonating with different teachings here and there more. It wasn't like being force-fed or doing it just because it's part of a tradition or custom. So basically the same thing as when I was a kid. I just didn't want to just follow things. So I wasn't doing that. I was just resonating with different things. Oh yeah, this sounds true, this feels true, etc. And also had psychedelic experiences. And so as I kept continuing on the path, the picture that the world started revealing itself to be was actually a lot of it has been kind of described in different parts of Hinduism and Buddhism. So weirdly, I started doing a loop and returning back to that which I had rejected in many different ways. And today, sitting here, as we are talking about these things, and we're talking about, the theory of Tantra, the book that you mentioned, all of these different protocols, and the thing that's said in Hinduism about so many different rebirths, and the fact, I kind of feel glad that I came from such an expansive religion that accommodates so many different possibilities and that has so much richness and space. Compared to that, if I even take maybe the broadest view of something like Christianity, it seems quite narrow to me, the story. There's one God, there's one guy, and just get with the program, you do this thing. Whereas the stuff that we are talking about is a lot of it is just crazy, ridiculous stuff, and yet it is all part of the in fact, I was talking to an intellectual who I met in India, and he was saying Hinduism is the only religion that accommodates atheism as a path. It's there is nothing else out there that you're oh yeah, you don't want to believe in God? Sure, we got a path for that. And so in a way, I feel that little atheist Neil couldn't have been in any other school of thought than this. So in a way, I do feel a little bit of a sense of reconciliation. I had this aversion, pushing away. And now I'm saying I kind of feel glad that it was that my roots were in Hinduism, because I do feel like, oh, I resonate with a lot of like weird ideas, and there's a place for them here, you know?
Yeah.
We're sitting here talking about this.
No, absolutely. I had a similar thought to you. It's not that I started out an atheist, that after moving to America,
Yeah.
I became an atheist after I read about evolution and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And weirdly enough, it was Ham Harris who both turned me atheist and then also turned me into like exploring these other dimensions of reality.
Damn, Sam Harris, if you're ever listening to this in the future, like, how did you even unknowingly, like, kind of change the trajectory to...
Yeah, I mean, like, part of it is, his initial lectures, they're about, you know, like, the religion that is tolerant is bullshit, and that turned me atheist. But then he also has talks about, you know, like, what meditation and psychedelic experiences that are like, there is something there to explore, and he leaves it open.
Yeah.
And so that gave me the permission to explore those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I found it palatable, his presentation of these things. He was like, oh, if you think about the self, it's actually also like a neuroscience problem. We can't really find the self. I was like, okay, I'm willing to be interested in this as a scientist. And then the deeper I went into it, the more it was like this non-duality stuff and like Advaita. I was like, okay, now I'm kind of like more deep into like Advaita Vedanta and things like that. But if I had been immediately presented with that, I would be like, what the fuck is this? Go away. But since it had been presented to me through this Western neuroscientist presenting certain like, you know, philosophical questions and things like that, starting from science, I was like, yeah, this totally I have no problem with. And then it was like a little ramp back. Yeah, which was necessary. I mean, I don't think I would have it any other way.
I agree too.
Yeah, I don't think it's like it's substitutable. Like, the fact that I went away from religion with disbelief and then came back to it is not the same thing as having just believed from time t equals 0. There is a difference.
Then in fact, I think it's a more richer acceptance, because like, when you're back, it's not because it is expected of you or anything. You are doing it because you saw the light in a way, you know. And recently my parents were visiting me, and they see who I have become. That I'm not the standard Indian that they expected. In some ways, I'm more Indian than most Indians, right? And in some ways, but then on the mindset of an Indian is like a colonialized employee who is riding on the capitalist economy and social acceptance, you know. So that's their view of like a standard Indian. And I got to hold them in this sadness, like, Mom, I understand that I'm not who you wanted me to be, and it's understandable because among 100 of your friends who have their kids in America, nobody has turned out like me. And then they saw me doing all these hippie things. I took them to the parties where people were naked and stuff.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And it like.
But dude, kudos to them. They have like a.
They didn't know it would end up that way. But
did you?
Probably, I don't know.
I see.
But
I think they still have like a bit of a stomach for these things.
Yeah, but I mean, part of my reason to have them here was I was having the double life,
Yeah.
and it was so painful to have the double life that I've gone to merge as much as possible.
Yeah.
And by exposing them to these conflicts popped up, and I could discuss them rather than hiding them away. And so then like she was traumatized that I have become a hippie, and she's like, "Oh, why have you become a hippie?" Then I shared with her like, "Hey mom, like all these religious experiences that you read in these books and stuff, I'm having those experiences, and
if you had them, you would become a hippie too.
And yeah, I'm having those experiences partly after accepting the hippie path, and I'm not doing this only as a hedonistic thing. This is my spiritual path, and it is as real as any. I mean, you are pedestalizing the people in these books who had these experiences. I'm having those experiences too, but you're like, you are. But those people who wrote these books, their norms did not accept them as well. Like those people, like her teacher, he left his home, went to the forest, stayed for 12 years. His mom would have wanted him to, marry, settle down, take up a stable job as well. But now you are reading his books like, wow, look at him, amazing. And I'm doing that too. But you're like, man, no.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference. Like you want the spiritual leader to be someone else. And you want your child to just stay your child. There's a little bit of like a possessiveness there. Like, oh, but if you like do that, where are we?
Yeah, in the way like become the spiritual path, you still want to hold on to the identity that you have, the social reputation that you have, and hold on to that while having a show of spirituality, because that has social rewards. And and that is what most religions have become. A show of religiosity for the social rewards.
Thanks for hanging out with Pratim and me today in the Room of Lives. Take care until next time.